What's up, everyone? My name is Achil Prabhat Rudolph. I'm a social confidence coach, and I help predominantly South Asian origin men get the kind of confidence that is necessary to attract a partner in the real world, in the West. And in this video, we'll talk about why it is that Indian men generally tend to avoid dating because they think it's a waste of time and energy. And we'll also talk about ways that you can find, if you're willing to do the work, to overcome this perception. Now, obviously, a lot of Indian men, especially those who come here to the West, focused on their career and their studies in their 20s, and oftentimes they almost near their 30s when they realize that they haven't really dated and they haven't really built any skills in the area of how to meet the right people. So they often feel pressured at that point to get an arranged marriage because the time is ticking and the parents usually exert a lot of pressure. And so a lot of men just end up getting an arranged marriage without really wanting that because they think it's their only option. And if that's you, then here's an opportunity for you to really change your life, because usually when people come and tell me they feel pressured and they don't have any other options, it's just that they're lazy. And I want you to ask yourself right now, do you really don't not have an option? Or are you just lazy? And if you're clicking away right now and watching some other video, then what it means is basically you're lazy and you're addicted to quick dopamine hits, and you can't sit through a half an hour video where someone explains to you a way out. And yes, this is going to take you to really focus in, to maybe close the other tabs that are open right now and just listen to this one guy who says, hey, I want to talk about this problem. Let's not avoid it. Let's not evade it. Let's face it. And at the end of this video, you will have a path. You'll have a direction that you can move in starting today. And then at least you can say that you tried it. And at least you can say that when your relationship fails, it's not because of your parents, but because of you. Let's diagnose this whole phenomenon first of all. It is clear that commitment plays a much higher role in the Indian cultural context. And in India, when relationships are formed, it's very important to decide very quickly on whether this is a lifelong thing or not. And if it is, people generally fight it out. In the West, this kind of commitment is rare. Here, people can stay together for many years trying to figure out whether they want to stay together. And sometimes they're together for 10 years, live together, but still have no idea whether they actually want to found a family. And this obviously has a few negative effects. It has its benefits because you get to adjust and life changes and you can change things around you. But obviously there's a problem with the age, where at a certain age it just becomes very hard to have lots of children. Obviously also it becomes hard to justify big investments in a relationship when you don't know how long it's going to last. And a lot of men would say, yeah, but I can just be with someone and I don't really have to invest much. It's just living together. Actually, we're saving. But then you should remember that being with someone is always a certain responsibility. I was in a relationship at one point in my life where I was with a woman who was a student, and she had money coming from home that was financing her, but at some point something happened at home and that money stopped coming. And at that point I realized that I had been very comfortable living with this woman and thinking, yeah, it's no big deal. But then the moment she got into financial problems, that became my problem. So when you're in a relationship, you definitely carry a certain burden. And when you're not sure whether the relationship will continue, it's a little bit uncomfortable to justify that. If we were married, then it would be easy for me to say, of course, I'm going to provide. But if it's not clear whether this woman would stay for another year, if we'll have children together, or whether someone else will come along in her life or in my life, you do think about that. And that's a bit of a weird situation to be in. And so knowing that there's a certain uncertainty You will tend to invest less. You'll tend to not fight as hard for the relationship. You'll tend to make less sacrifices. And when the initial high of being in love wanes off, it's very likely that the relationship will actually drift apart. You'll also not want to get emotionally invested in the first place in a relationship like that. You're going to automatically protect yourself against heartbreak by not even opening up in a relationship like that. So these are real problems. On top of that, you have the problem that you can't really include someone in your family life when you're not yet fully committed. And this is really weird, especially for Indians. We like to be with family. That's one of my favorite memories of my childhood, to be in a big house with a lot of family around. And a girlfriend is just not going to be accepted in that context in most cases. And yeah, why should they accept a girlfriend? Because you at least get the benefit of having companionship right now. So you don't necessarily need that commitment, but your family doesn't care about you having companionship in your house, not that much. They're like, is this going to be our daughter-in-law or not? And so with all these fears surrounding Western non-committal dating, it's understandable that people coming from India are not very enthusiastic about dating. But this is where the whole problem gets exacerbated, because it's true, there's a risk and there's a certain big group in the population of Western people who are not going to be very good partners for committed relationship. But then there are also a lot of people who would actually be great partners. And since Indians tend to be so scared of the risk and of that group that would not be a good partner, they tend to not even try to find the ones that are actually compatible. So the whole fear, as with most fears, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And they stay in this very conflicted kind of half-assing mode where they say, yeah, I'd like to date, but actually I have all these fears. And so when you have all these fears, obviously you're not going to attract the people that you want to attract. You're going to meet exactly the woman that you are afraid of. You're going to meet the not so healthy, more hedonistic, maybe in a whole different age group, or people who you feel like are just exploiting you. Maybe they had their fun in their 20s and you feel like now they're settling for you, and that of course also feels uncomfortable. And so those relationships will not last, and in those relationships you will make exactly the experiences that you're afraid of. So if you have these fears in your mind, you can't expect to have any different experiences in the real world. So how do you do that? How do you get rid of those fears so that you open up to the experiences with people that are actually not corresponding to these fears? Well, the first thing is you have to understand that those people actually exist. That's the first thing. A lot of Indian men come to me, they say, I don't think that good women exist in the West. I've heard that. You have to make it very obvious that there are compatible women in the West, and you can look around, you can look at friends, you can look at your colleagues, and you'll find women that are actually amazing and that are also interested in commitment and long-term marriage. And you'll understand at that point that healthy dating is really about that. It is about leading you to a long-term committed relationship, and ideally also towards a family. That's the case here as much as it is the case over there in India. It's just that here there are more modern, more misguided approaches to relationships. And yes, they exist, but not everyone follows them. You have to accept, though, that there is this testing mode of relationships that exists here that doesn't exist in India. And just the way that you're going to now start testing certain people, the women here also will want to test certain people before committing. You have to acknowledge that without judging it. And then you have to understand that women here will commit and will be happy to go towards marriage and family with you, if they see that you are an amazingly compatible person for them. If you're just an amazing dude in their eyes, or you're just perfectly compatible, ideally both, that's going to make a woman commit here. And instead of saying, yeah, that's not gonna happen, I'm not amazing enough, see it as a motivation to become amazing enough. Become amazing, and commitment will not be a problem for you. Usually when the women that you're dating don't really want to commit, or you make that experience in your friend circle, it is because you are actually still weak, because you're not ready, because you're not yet committed to your own life, to yourself, to your purpose as a man. So take it as a motivation when someone doesn't want to commit to you, to get more committed to yourself and to become a man of your word and actually do the things that you want to do, who follows his own purpose. And then you will be able to attract a lot of people who are really willing to commit to you. And you can go on dates and you don't have to sleep with a lot of people. That's not at all what this means. You can get to know a lot of people, and then you can decide which ones would be most compatible for you. And when you have that feeling that you have abundance because your life is going in the right direction and you're meeting people along the way, you won't be too needy also. So you won't be scared even of one or two like flaking on you or not committing when you're ready to commit, because you'll be like, yeah, it's okay. You'll always be able to meet new people. And meeting people will be easy for you. Meeting the right people will be easy for you. I don't know if you can understand what that really means, but imagine what that would mean for you. If meeting the right people would be easy for you. You walk around and in your everyday life, in the supermarket, in the train station, in the gym, you see people that are actually great for you, and you know how to talk to them, and you end up talking to them, and you end up having a good vibe with them, and that'll happen every day. With that feeling, you will not even be scared. You will not be scared at all of anyone not committing to you, because you know you can easily find someone else who would be willing to commit to you. And until you've gotten to that point where meeting new people is easy for you, because you believe in yourself, because you know how to confidently express yourself, you know how to attract the right people, until that point you haven't done enough work. You haven't done the work on yourself. You haven't completed the work on yourself. And then finally, it's also important to realize that being in a relationship where commitment is not yet final is actually a beautiful thing and can be advantageous for you. Certainly it is a certain responsibility, and it can be a certain economic burden. You'll have to spend some time, you have to spend some resources on maintaining the relationship, but you also obviously save a lot. You also save a lot in terms of money. If you live together, for example, you can share tasks, share resources. You'll go out less. You'll probably go out to the bars and clubs and cafes, even in restaurants, a little less, spending much less on that front. But then, of course, also there's many other resources that you're saving on. And by fixating on the economic resources, you actually display a very unsexy scarcity mindset. And that, I believe, is also a big reason for a lot of poverty in the world. When people focus on those economic measures, it's really just stupid in my eyes, because other things are so much more important. For example, when you're in a relationship, you get emotional support. Emotional support ideally for pursuing your dream in life. How valuable is that? Because that's going to get you to become the person that you want to be. That's going to also just make a lot more money. So even if you wanted to measure that in economic terms, it would just be so much more than a dinner here or supporting your girlfriend when she needs money for her studies here and there. You also learn a lot about yourself. This is again something you can't really easily measure monetarily, but you're going to learn so much about yourself and your psychology and female psychology and the world by being in a relationship. This is something you get to take out of the relationship, no matter what happens, no matter how it goes, no matter when or if someone commits or doesn't. So as long as you are improving yourself in the relationship, you are benefiting. That's something that happened to me after a few relationships. I realized that they kind of ended the same way, and the main reason that was that I just didn't want to do the work that I needed to do to make a relationship last. And when I started doing that, I realized that it didn't just make the relationship last, but it also turned me into a better person. And that's a great motivation to stay in a relationship, because you feel like this relationship makes you grow and become better at whatever you're doing. Of course, it's great and necessary then if you're actually working on the thing that you care about the most. Because if you're just doing a job to support a family, if you're just doing a job to really attract a woman and feed her children, well, then it's going to be frustrating if you're with a person where it's not clear whether she's actually going to be that person. Okay, so you need to be doing something that you care about itself, that is an end in itself. And then as long as that other person supports that pursuit of you on your purpose, it's all good. And as you keep working on your purpose, your value keeps increasing. So as unromantic and weird as it might sound, that person that is in a relationship with you is increasing your market value, helping you increase your market value. So if she doesn't end up being the person that you end up with for the rest of your life, she will have helped you find someone else. And if it doesn't work, you'll just go back out and walk around in the city, and again, you will easily meet people. And then it becomes kind of romantic again if you stay together with that person and don't leave the relationship. You're really sacrificing all of that. And you will still be able to go out and meet new people. You'll still get invitations from people to approach. You'll get smiles on the bus, or let's say driving your Ferrari from another car. But you'll say, no, I'm not going to approach. I'm not going to make that step and talk to a new person. And then it becomes a beautiful and huge sacrifice that you're giving up this optionality for the woman that you chose to be with. And then it becomes pretty romantic again. And yes, sometimes a woman will not be able to see your value yet. She will still be second guessing and not yet sure whether she should commit to you. Once your value becomes more apparent and you keep improving yourself on your own purpose journey, it should become more clear to her as well. And if it doesn't, then it is your responsibility to call it off. And that's a difficult step, but sometimes you'll have to make that. And then while this might still feel like a bit of a tentative, a little bit of a conditional love in the beginning of a relationship, it can clearly grow into that unconditional love, that ride or die attitude that you know from Indian functional healthy arranged marriages. You can grow that over time. So in conclusion, if you're not seeing the short-term benefits of dating, if you cannot enjoy that process of being with someone and slowly kind of increasing the level of commitment, then it's definitely not for you. If you're only in it for marriage, and that's the only real reason you feel like a relationship could be beneficial for you, then it's better for you to get an arranged marriage. If you're in a rush to get married, if it has to happen next year and there's no other way, then again, you will have to get an arranged marriage. To make dating work, you will have to make that purpose work. You'll have to make sure that you are on an amazing mission in your own life and do something that you're passionate about. And if you're not ready to do the work that is necessary to develop that kind of greatness, then dating is not going to be fun for you. And if you're full of fears, and if you're just an extremely fearful person and you don't want to change that, and you project all these fears onto the people you meet, then those are going to turn into self-fulfilling prophecies. And again, dating is not a good idea for you. Get an arranged marriage. But if that does not apply, if you feel like you could potentially change into the kind of person who's actually in love with his own life and who is excited by negotiating relationships and starting small but potentially ending in a deeply committed and loving relationship, then I think you can make it worthwhile. I think you can make dating work for you, and you can afford to give a lot in the short term. You can afford to invest a lot in a relationship because you're going to get a lot back on many different dimensions. But of course, it's also important to set boundaries and not give up everything for the other person, but set a clear boundary up to which point are you willing to give and invest into this relationship, and at which point does it become clear that you're losing here. This is another important task and a lot of deep introspective work that needs to happen for you to make sure that you know where that boundary is. And if you want to get my personal mentorship in implementing this knowledge and finding the right partner on your own, but also finding those boundaries and finding that purpose, then I'll be happy to talk to you. There's a link in the description where you can schedule a one-on-one call where we can find out if I could be a good guide for you in this process. Thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. Samgachatvam. Namaskar.